Aisha's age doesn't matter, then Muhammad's examples doesn't matter as well. Islam says Muhammad is timeless, then defends him as time-bound. This isn't about history. It's about whether Islam survives its own prophet.
Behavior. Well, let me go straight in with you then.
Yeah, no problem.
Straight in, balls deep. The Prophet Muhammad at 56 had sex with a 9-year-old. Okay or not okay?
Now, this is the number one interrogation that people have against Islam, I think, in recent times, especially people from the far right. And the response, the traditionalist, conventional traditionalist response, has always been to say the following. This is anachronistic reasoning. This is the fallacy of presentism. And that back in the days, almost every single state and nation had puberty as the defining factor. And that people were getting married at 9 and 10 and 11. And even your kings were getting married at that time. And even your queens were getting married at that time, and etc., etc., etc. And look at Delaware. And look at these states in America where the age of marriage was until 7 years old, until quite recent. And that this situation has changed in the early 1900s. And all of this is a valid historical criticism that almost any historical worth his academic salt will accept. However, because the lay people are not like academics and they don't understand what you call the thick description, what Clifford Geertz called the thick description of sociological and anthropological phenomena, these specious and spurious claims against Islam are continually iterated and reiterated. So let's give you another angle. Let me ask you a question to start us up. The question is this. If someone does not believe that Aisha was 9 at the consummation, if someone believes in the revisionist account, for example, that she was 19, are they excommunicated beyond the pale of Islam? Is your understanding that believing that the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ married Aisha at that particular age is an undercutter to the whole religion of Islam? Do you believe that this is an article of our faith? Do you believe that this is a pillar of our faith? Do you believe that this is one of the arkan, one of the pillars of Iman? No, it's none of the above. And that's why you actually find some traditionalist scholars of recent times talking about the plausibility of the revisionist account that she could have been 18 or 19. In fact, you had this individual called Abdurrahman Kandahlawi who wrote an entire book on the matter saying that she could have been 19 years old and explaining why. And you know the Asma argument basically stating that.
Well. Mohammed Hijab says believing Aisha was 9 years old is not the article of faith. That's destruction. It screams as destruction. No one is asking whether it is the pillar of Islam or not. The real question is this. What does Islam do when its most authentic sources describes behavior that modern Muslims now feel forced to reinterpret? Problem is not the belief. Problem is the authority right now. Islam doesn't claim Muhammad is just a caravan robber from 7th century. Islam claims Muhammad is the moral pattern for all people at all times. So, everyone did it back then doesn't solve the problem, and it creates bigger and bigger problem. You can't say his actions are binding, then say, well, don't judge them. They were contextual. You only get one of these. Now look at the revisionist move, right? Maybe, just maybe, Aisha was 18 or 19. Ask yourself, why now? Seriously, why now in 21st century? For over 1,000 years, Muslims accepted that traditional account without any shame, without any embarrassment. The revisionism only steps in when moral conscience steps in. They recalculate the timelines, they reinterpret the hadith, and then simply message the numbers. None of those touches the real problem. Because no amount of revision changes the Quran Surah 65 verse 4, which simply screams out, you can marry girl who is not bleeding yet, have sex with them, and then divorce them, and then let them wait so that they can go and marry with someone else while they are still not bleeding. Of course, that verse only disappear when you bring the sheep to eat it. So, even if Aisha was 19, the textual and moral issue still remains intact. That is the bottom line. And you know what? This is where the gospel is different. God doesn't ask us to reinterpret him. In Jesus Christ, God reveals himself as self-giving love. Father delights in the Son, the Spirit pouring that love outward. Not revisionism, not damage control, just a God whose moral beauty doesn't need rescuing. And you know what? That's not apologetics. That's simply revelation.